How do you stop a cash flow gap in your business before it's a problem? And the answer isn't a budget. I'm John Briggs, creator of the 3.3 rule and the 3.3 system, where our desire is to help all business owners and their team members enjoy work-life harmony. And I can promise you, cash flow is definitely a factor in work-life harmony. I worked as a controller for a door-to-door sales company, sometimes known as summer sales companies. And this company did $30 million in revenue, close to $30 million in revenue, the same year it declared bankruptcy and went out of business. How can you make that much money and be bankrupt? Well, they had some cash flow gap issues that they weren't managing. They had no visibility on. Now, as the controller, I actually take zero responsibility for that. Controller was a very interesting title in that company because of all the people on the leadership team, I had zero control. In fact, in one meeting, they were having a conversation about, hey, we should do this, we should do that. And I'm like, hey, I don't think we have the money for that. The president would look to the other guy and said, like, dude, just tell me it's going to be worth it. Oh, bro, it's going to be so worth it. And so they spent more money on something that actually wasn't worth it. The way these summer sales companies work is they give their sales reps a draw. So they pay them a certain amount every month. And then at the end of their summer sales season, they give them a big check known as the back end check, where they compare how much did you get in sales minus what we've already paid you. And so when that moment came, I was able to tell them, hey guys, to pay all these paychecks, we're about $3 million short, meaning we need $3 million more in the bank account if these checks are going to clear. Well, they didn't clear. They bounced. And then the sales reps bounced. Some of the leadership bounced because they're terrible human beings and moved on to competitors who were very willing to open their pocketbook and just take people at their dishonest word of, oh, your back end check was $100,000. Here's a check for $100,000. Commit to selling for us for 2 years, and you can cash that check. So it was a problem, and all that stemmed. This whole business, that again, 30 million in revenue is no small feat. This whole business went down because of mismanaged cash flow. Now, this president, Doug, and then his people with him, they are the poster children of what's known as Parkinson's law. You know, there's this reverse supply and demand that he saw exist in his world, which is the demand for something will continue to expand to match the supply. So the demand for something continues to expand to match the supply. In this case, what we're talking about in this video is cash flow. And so think about having your bank account, that's a giant pile of supply. And the demand to spend that cash will continue to increase as long as there's cash there to spend. And then with our human behaviors, with no boundaries, which is what this company had, no boundaries. With that lack of boundaries, they actually not only spent the cash, the supply that was in demand, they spent more than what they had available to spend. Why? Because, dude, just tell me it's worth it. Which, by the way, not a great cash flow management strategy. That guy is in charge of another company, I believe, right now. I hope they're doing better. I hope he's learned. But this was very detrimental. This guy wasn't even an owner. And anyways, it was a really bad situation. And I hope all those people involved have learned. I certainly have learned a lot since then and are now better for it. What they really needed were boundaries to help with this cash flow. With proper boundaries, you can actually identify cash flow gaps. With proper boundaries and a good cash flow management system, they would have been able to identify months in advance, hey, it looks like we're gonna be short $3 million. Maybe we should figure out how to keep some money in the bank account so that it's available to spend when we need to pay our sales reps, who, for the record, in a sales organization, happen to be a pretty critical component of the business's success. So we believe the best system to manage cash flow is profit first. This is a book written by Mike Michalowicz, and since then, Mike has allowed niche experts to write books for their industry. For example, we work with a lot of gym owners in our tax firm. And so years ago, I wrote the book Profit First for micro gyms. I was actually the third person who wrote a niche book. And since then, I want to say there's about 20 to 30 maybe, with more in the works. So like, lawn care specialists and dentists and real estate investors and realtors. Like there's a lot of different Profit First books out there, but Profit First by Mike Michalowicz was the original. And this is what I have found over the 15 years I've been using the system to be the most effective in helping me not only manage my cash, but if there's going to be cash flow gaps, it allows me to identify them. Obviously, I encourage everyone to read Profit First and anything written by Mike Michalowicz. He's a great small business author, provides a lot of practical information in his books, not just like theoretical stuff. The gist of the system is you create multiple bank accounts, and each bank account has specific purposes. For example, paying yourself, that's a good purpose. Giving yourself profit distributions, that's a great purpose. Saving money for income tax so that the money's there to pay the income tax when you pay it once a year, or quarterly if you do quarterly payments. Also, setting aside money for operating expenses. So the beauty of this system is when income comes in, you're actually pre-assigning it to these different buckets, which happen to be bank accounts. And this way, that demand for your cash that continues to expand until there's no more cash available, we can put a boundary around that because we're already taking cash and putting it towards specific purposes, which we know are good for the business, good for work-life harmony for the owner and for the team members. That's the gist of the system. A lot of details in there. Again, we believe it's the best cash flow management system. And with it, because I'm taking the income and I'm setting it aside for different purposes, the bank account that I have specifically for operating my business is gonna not have 100% of my income in it. This allows me to see if I have cash flow gaps because I can, using the system, I can identify I have bills coming up and I can see how much money I have in the bank account. I'm not gonna have enough money to cover those, which means my business has more expenses than I can afford. If the company I worked for as a controller did this, we would have identified this probably 6 to 7 months in advance. And again, we could have been able to then say, when that guy comes and is like, dude, I think we should spend money on this, instead of the stupidest response of, dude, tell me it's going to be worth it. The answer would have been like, hey, sorry, unless you can figure out how to get the revenue in before we spend the money, we don't have the ability to do that because we need to set money aside for one of the most critical components of our business, which is our sales reps. And in fact, in that business, I would have had a separate bank account. And as our obligation for these checks that were happening, the back end checks that were going to happen after the summer sales season, we would be putting money away into that bank account. So there was never going to be a question that we didn't have enough money to cover those expenses. So that's one of the things that would have happened. It would have identified, again, Profit First, great. It's great stuff. And so let me bring this back to work-life harmony and helping people avoid working nonstop. Lack of cash flow is the root of so many problems in businesses. In my 3.3 system, we've identified 11 critical components. We call it a baseline of things that businesses should be focusing on, because those 11 things, not done well, can be the root of a whole bunch of other symptoms that a lot of people end up spending time trying to fix the symptoms instead of the root. And those 11 things are actually based on 4 critical areas of any business, cash flow being one of them. If I have a lack of cash flow, that's going to increase the temptation to work nonstop, which then only decreases my quality of work and my quality of life. But throw the quality of life thing aside for a second. Let's just further down this rabbit hole of lack of cash flow. So I'm now tempted to work nonstop. I'm working nonstop. We know science supports that I am not going to be providing the same quality of work. It's going to degrade because I'm working nonstop, which now means I'm going to have a decrease in satisfied clients or an increase in unsatisfied clients, which then means my revenue is going to decrease. And when my revenue decreases, that further perpetuates my temptation to continue to work nonstop, which I'm already doing. And for the record, if you're already working nonstop and you've further perpetuated your need to work nonstop, you can't like double your nonstop work. Nonstop is nonstop. That's like using a superlative like always. You're always working. That's what nonstop means. And so people get into this cycle and it's just really hard to get out of. And so that's why we're here. We're trying to help people get in control of their cash flow, identify how do I work efficiently, how do I take breaks so that my quality of work doesn't decrease. That's what the 3.3 rule helps us to do. That's what the 3.3 system helps us to do. By accomplishing these things, we identify cash flow gaps before they happen. We decrease, eliminate, hopefully, the temptation to even work nonstop. And then we can focus on other elements of our business that then further, in this case, further perpetuates the work-life harmony that we're trying to accomplish for ourselves and for our team members. So if you want to dive deeper into this, please check out the book. The link is below. And thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one.